So, let's talk about policy. Let's talk about homelessness in particular. Now, we've seen a lot of folks on the right, on the left, become increasingly more anti-homeless. The Supreme Court this past year heard a case essentially arguing that cities and states should be able to criminalize homelessness and effectively, bar encampments from city limits, basically criminalize the state of being homeless. And one of the arguments that we on the left have been making for a very long time, or many of us on the left, I should say, is that criminalizing homelessness just drives up crime. It makes sense, right? Like, the more someone's back is pushed up against the wall, the more they're gonna seek to get out of that predicament. The harder they're gonna
Seriously
push
though,
back.
Jack, the vid I recommended about Google in the Discord slaps and explains so much about the enshittification of Google. It's worse than you realize.
Stadman, I will definitely take a look at that. Not right now, but I will take a look at that, I promise. Thank you for the $6.90 dono. I appreciate it. Very nice. But basically what happens when you criminalize homelessness is that desperate people get more desperate, which makes them more prone to taking action that will wind them up inside a jail cell or the prison system, right? Like, if you knew that, being homeless would render you a criminal anyway, why wouldn't you just start dealing drugs, right? Like, a lot of people would do that in order to keep their kids in a bed, in order to keep food on the table, in order to pay their grandma's hospital bills. There are a lot of things that people will do when they're backed into a corner that would go outside the bounds of the law. And it turns out, and it actually raises crime when you criminalize homelessness in this way. And on top of that, I learned today about a very new case study that drove down homelessness by not criminalizing it. And I know that seems really obvious, but I know that there are some people on the left and on the right and in the middle who will be surprised by this information. And frankly, I was a little surprised by it, but only insofar as I was surprised where this comes from, right? And so I found this article floating around from the website Governing, right? And the article's titled "Criminalizing Homelessness Can Lead to More Crime." And it cites the Supreme Court ruling that allows cities to step up basically anti-homeless legislation. But one of the very interesting things here, it starts out with some pretty grim statistics. Between 2022 and 2023, U.S. saw a 12% increase in homelessness, including a 15% increase in major cities, which is that's a big number. That is a very big number. However, it gets into a very interesting thing here, right? This summer, the Supreme Court released a decision that will make this problem worse. In its Grants Pass versus Johnson ruling, the court reopened the door for jurisdictions that wish to use criminalization, including measures such as encampment sweeps and increased enforcement of quality of life offenses, to address homelessness. Just in the past few months, San Francisco, Seattle, and cities across the state of Florida have implemented or adopted ordinances to enforce sleeping bans, while encampment raids have continued to sweep the country. Not only will this punitive approach fail to address homelessness, research shows that it may have another unintended effect, undermining public safety, right? Which is absolutely true. It will have that effect. But second, one of the other points here is that some of these measures to attack and criminalize homelessness are just cruel beyond belief. Like, one of the ordinances that was passed, I can't remember in which city, required someone to move 100 feet every hour or they could be arrested. Which means, effectively, if you fall asleep outside, you could be under arrest. Impossible to get any amount of functional sleep in that type of environment, right? But we're going to take a look here. Let me find this. And it's at the very tail end of this article, which I'm going to link in chat because it's very much worth reading in its entirety. All right, so please check this out. But one of the very interesting things here is that at the tail end of this, there is a bit of information, and that is that for the past 20 years, not for the past 20 years, for a period of 20 years, the city of Miami was under a court order that prevented it from criminalizing homelessness for 20 years. And in that time, the city invested into housing and services in Miami. What kind of effect might that have when you are forbidden by court order from putting homeless people into jail cells and are instead investing into housing and social services for people? Anyone want to take a wild guess at what happened to the homelessness population in the homeless population in Miami? Anyone want to take a wild guess? More homelessness went down. Sounds pretty good. They stopped being homeless. It's exactly Pluvius. Not only did many of them stop being homeless, 90% of them stopped being homeless. The homeless population of Miami, when Miami was forbidden from putting homeless people in jail cells and instead spent their money on housing and services, the homeless population went down to just 10% of what it had been previously. That's crazy. That's crazy. Like, why are so many cities around America are just going, I don't know, why, homeless problem, throw them in prison, instead of just, like, coming to the very rational conclusion, by all measurable, researchable methods, the solution is providing housing and social services in conjunction. And that typically gets people off the street, gets them into homes, and gets them leading happier and more productive lives. It's not rocket science. We've had data on this stretching back to the 1800s. You can find research paper after research paper after research paper indicating this. You can find city after city implementing these strategies, and it is the only reason it is not implemented is because that there is some monkey brain in all of us that is just like, people on street dirty and stinky. Must be moral failing on their part. They should continue to suffer. Grug. And like, instead of just being like, oh, well, all the research indicates that we should just put them in homes with social services to help them out. And then they stop being homeless because it's not some moral failing on their part. It's like a mental health issue or just like bad financial decisions or addiction, all of which can be alleviated with social services and housing. And surprisingly enough, none of which are alleviated with jail or prison. It's really bizarre how that all works out. And by the way, in case you're wondering where this 90% number comes from, because I know some people might call BS on that. Here is a case. I'm just going to throw it up on screen here, called from 2019, right? Called Pottinger versus City of Miami. And you'll find down underneath, I believe, discovery or background here. Let me take a look. What is this under? Memorandum of opinion. Yes, under the background section here. You will find right here. The court conducted an evidentiary hearing on the parties' motions over numerous days. The court will make findings of fact and separate conclusions of law based on the testimony of the city's witnesses, over 30 homeless witnesses, and several expert witnesses in the field of homelessness. The court is not charged with resolving the homelessness problem in the city of Miami. However, the court was impressed with all the services provided to the homeless by many individuals and organizations as a direct consequence of the cultural change engendered by the Pottinger Agreement. As such, there's little dispute that the number of homeless has been reduced county-wide from 10,000 to around 1,000. Although these numbers are imprecise because of the difficulty of counting the homeless. Of course, the overwhelming majority, over 600, are in the city of Miami. According to the U.S. Census, the 2017 population estimate for the city of Miami is 463,347, and the estimate for the county is 2,751,796. Meaning, even though the city's population is only about 17% of the county's overall population, it is home to over 60% of its homeless. Indeed, Mr. Ronald L. Book, chair of the Homeless Trust, testified that 66% of all homeless individuals placed in shelters come from the city of Miami. Thus, there's little dispute that Miami has changed. Its homeless population has declined by 90%. And the city is the only municipality out of 34 in the Miami-Dade County and the county's unincorporated area subject to the Pottinger Agreement. It was only Miami. But only in Miami did the number of homeless fall by 90%. There's a solution here. And it's giving them homes and social services. And you can quibble about the method of giving them homes, perhaps. Like, oh, well, they need to have like better housing complexes. Obviously. Should they be appropriated from like Airbnbs or like unused not apartment complexes, or should they be placed in old hotels or reconfigured office complexes? That's all open to interpretation and is going to vary on a place-by-place basis, but fundamentally, you get them housing and you get them social services, and things get better. Full stop. Get them housing that is dignified, and potentially even housing that could be long-term. The potential to maybe like buy the unit or, transition to a different arrangement within that unit. Like, there's a lot of ways you can do this. But at the end of the day, give them homes, give them social services, the problem disappears virtually overnight. The Profane Priestess, hello, and welcome, Raiders. Hope you had a good stream. Hope you enjoy yourselves here. Yeah. Howdy.